Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Story number 1. On Memorial Day of this year, I started working at one of the 2 gas stations in my small New Hampshire town, which is about 20 miles outside of our state capital. My town is basically the last line of civilization for an hour if you're traveling on the highway. So we get a lot of traffic. We also have a lot of regulars. We have people we know by name and people who we may not know the names of, but we recognize them, and the transaction will go a lot quicker if I just ask, "Do you want your cigarettes today?" Or "Which scratch ticket are you thinking about getting?" Most of these regulars are very kind to us. One even threatened to beat a guy who came in and tried to grab my coworker's hair when his card was declined. The person involved in this story was supposed to be one of those nice people. He was a guy whose name I never knew. He mostly came in during 3rd shift, and I usually saw him when I was about to leave. For the sake of the story, we'll call him Matty. He was always very pleasant and would always strike up a conversation with whoever was checking him out. The one I remember most vividly was us talking about all the reboots and sequels Hollywood keeps churning out. I want to work my way into the film industry someday and become either a writer or a director, and we were talking about how I could just start putting an end to the sequel fatigue. Last night I was cashing out my drawer after 3rd shift. We had both been gone for 3 days and were trying to catch each other up on what had happened over that time. Suddenly the 3rd shift guy brings up this open murder case. A woman from a town 30 minutes up the highway had gone missing, and then had been found dead in a washing machine that had been crudely dumped into a pond. He then brings up the fact that Matty was a prime suspect in the case. Matty was a bit of a druggie, to put it lightly, and had some shady connections. Eventually there was a rumor that he was into some fucked up stuff on the dark web and had some very brutal connections through there. I knew Matty had a drug issue, as he had told all of our staff about his issue and his rehab experiences. One of the 3rd shift guys, which is a friend, had also been put through the ringer by the cops, as he had gone out with the victim on a date only 2 nights before her disappearance. He wasn't ruled a suspect after a lot of questioning and looking through evidence. Matty evidently told the other 3rd shift worker that he was going out of town for a little while, a few nights back. I don't know if that was partly true or not, as it was passed on to me by a 2nd shift worker who likes to gossip about everything she can. If it is true, I would definitely think he had something to do with it. When my dad told me I'd meet some whacked individuals working this job, I believed him. I think this just cements that statement even more. Story number 2. My first semester in an out-of-state college had just ended, and I was on my way home for my brother's wedding. I'm about an hour away from my current residence with a little over 3 hours left of my trip. Everything is going great and I'm cruising with the traffic. It was a notably busy day for that particular stretch of interstate. As I said, all is well until I checked my mirror. There was a truck a little farther back from the side of my car in the lane next to me. I can see his headlights in my passenger side mirror. I look up because even though it's in the middle of the afternoon and very sunny, this guy's flashing his lights at me. I try to brush it off and assume he just wants to get into my lane, so I try moving. He stays behind me the whole time, not letting any other cars between us. He keeps flashing his lights at me and I look up at him. He waves and honks. This was a red flag, but I took it the wrong way. I'm like, oh shit, I wonder if he's signaling me to pull over. I hope nothing's wrong with my car. The only reason I think this is because a week before, I was leaving and I had gotten a hole in my tire and had it patched. I was worried that the patch had fallen out and that my tire was going flat as I traveled at 60 miles an hour. I'm freaking out about my car and plan to pull off at the next exit. Fortunately, it comes up quickly and there's a gas station with some customers visible from the exit ramp. I head there and pull up at a gas pump, and of course the trucker follows me off the interstate and into the same parking lot, but he parked in a designated truck zone only. I get out just before he parks and walk around my car, doing a quick inspection. I see him start to get out of his truck and I decide to buy gas, even though I filled up before I left. As I swiped my card to pay for the gas, the truck driver had reached my car. Lucky for me, since I was already pretty freaked out by him following me off the exit, I had my phone in my hand with 911 already dialed, so all I had to do was hit the call button. I left my driver door open and stayed between that and the gas hose. The first thing this guy says to me is, "Well, aren't you pretty?" I'm screaming in my head now, imagining all the possible scenarios for an emergency escape. He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s, and about 170 pounds. Me? I'm 18, 125 pounds, without much muscle or fat anywhere. I wouldn't have been able to fight back much. Anyway, I tell him thank you. He offers to buy my gas and I decline, saying my parents gave me money. I was actually worried that he would expect something in return if I had taken his offer. He asked me questions like, where am I from? Where am I going? Something went off in my head that just said, lie, lie, lie. And so I did. Didn't tell him what college I really went to, where I was really headed and what I was doing. Nothing. My gas was done pumping after 1 minute, a whole $12. And with that I told him goodbye, jumped in my car and got the hell out of there. I kept an eye on him as he left, making sure he didn't follow me any longer, and he didn't. I never saw him again. I don't know what he wanted with me that day, whether it was just to tell me how attractive I was, or if he had something much worse planned. I really regret not reporting him to the police. Since this incident, I've always been leery of truck drivers. Story number 3. A little over 1 year ago, I had a job working overnight at a gas station close to my house. I'm a woman and was 31 at the time. I know, to some it seems unsafe for a woman to work graveyard shift by herself. However, it was a slow store and the sheriff's office was about 20 feet across from it. I really didn't think I would have that many problems. There would be about 30 customers in an 8-hour shift, and that was on a busier night. It was about 3:30 in the morning. I went outside to sweep the parking lot and to check the trash. It was time for a cigarette and I had one headphone in, kind of jamming out. Across the road in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, I saw a figure with his back to me. He was swaying back and forth while looking down. Honestly, it looked like he was enjoying a much-needed pee. Against the sheriff's office, though? Yeah, the building closed at 4 p.m. and didn't open again until 6 the next morning. But why? By the back of his ripped white t-shirt, I remembered that he had come in about 4 hours earlier. He was a total creep and I could already tell he had a good buzz going. I didn't say anything. I just took my eyes off him and tried not to draw attention to myself. It was working until a car pulled in. I was still outside as they pulled up. I saw him look at the car and then at me, and back and forth again. As the customer was leaving, I walked her outside. I still had half a smoke burning, and had left my dustpan outside with a squeegee. We both heard him start to swear angrily, and seemingly engage in an argument with himself. She looked across the road and told me to be careful. I made an awkward joke about him being the one who should be more afraid of me, or something like that. The man was still there but closer to the road, now facing the parking lot of my store. Whatever he's yelling was completely unintelligible. He was obviously very drunk and could barely stand up straight, still swaying in the wind. I didn't engage him, but I didn't take my eyes off him this time. I was just slowly walking back into the store. Something about his face really bothered me. It had a darkness to it, but his eyes looked wild. My experience during graveyard jobs has been that the crazy-eyed ones are the worst ones. I didn't like it at all and wanted no part of this. I still had almost 3 hours to go and 2 before any other employees got there. Instantly, I went to the computer and typed up a temporarily closed sign, just in case he wanted trouble. I was coming around the counter on my way to the doors when I saw that he'd walked across the road to my side now. I literally just barely got the second door locked when he stumbled into our very small parking lot. My hand mimed the hand signal for cut across my neck, basically saying, "Nope, sorry, you can't come in here, we're closed." I shook my head back and forth too, hoping to further discourage him. He started walking away but screamed something at me while he was walking. I don't mean he was grumpy and shouted at me or yelled that I was an asshole or anything. I mean like he was at an enraged volume and was violently throwing his hands everywhere. Definitely know I'm in the wrong shift on the wrong job. I got really creeped out. I called the police. It's a good thing too, because the minute I hung up with them, here he comes again up to the door. He starts pulling and banging on the door. He backs up and runs into it, trying to ram it. Not that it would have done any good. I made the mistake of telling him that I'd called the cops and his ass was about to be grass. I say I made the mistake of telling him because once I said that, he took off. The police never found him. They drove around the road and surrounding neighborhoods for over an hour, but found no one. He was on foot, so I don't know where he could have gone. He didn't harm me, and with them not finding him, I didn't fill out a police report or anything. I was safe behind thick glass doors that were locked for the rest of my shift. It just sucked. Maybe if I didn't warn him ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to spend the last 3 months of my job constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll never know what the right choice was. I'm just glad I don't work there anymore. Story number 4. Back in 2000 or 2001, I was driving by myself from visiting my mom in Colorado, back to Arizona. I was driving a station wagon and had a desk my mom had given me that was my grandfather's. I've always been scared driving at night, that there's someone in my back seat that is going to get me. This might be because of too many scary movies, or because my mom's paranoia rubbed off on me. I was in the army and drove back and forth a lot to visit her. She would get mad at me for sleeping at rest stops or gas stations, and tell me someone was going to kidnap me and kill me, but I just didn't want to be bothered with the hassle and expense of a motel most of the time. I digress. So I'm driving in an empty stretch of highway late at night with no other cars around. This red truck comes up behind me, flashing his lights and honking his horn. I was thinking to myself that there was something wrong with my car, or maybe there was something wrong with the desk in the hatchback. Because why else would he be so insistent on me pulling over? So I pull over. I was in my mid-20s and still a bit naive, and get out of my car. As I'm getting out of my car, he's directly behind me, and still flashing his lights and honking his horn. I got to about the middle of the car when it hit me. Why is he still honking at me when I'm out of my car? That's odd. Then he gets out of his truck. That's when I knew something just wasn't right. I jumped back in my car and sped off. The next exit was 45 miles or so away, and he followed me the entire time. I take the first exit to a crowded gas station with a laundromat next to it. There was an ambulance parked at the laundromat with its lights flashing, and I was next to it. I figured if there was an ambulance, then eventually a police officer would come. The man stayed in his truck in the gas station parking lot, watching me the entire time. I was so terrified. I did not want to get out of my car, and I felt like an idiot if I would have just told someone what happened. I waited an hour and he finally left. After he left, I waited a little longer before continuing my drive back to Arizona. I was paranoid and watchful for any red trucks the entire time. Fast forward 5 or 6 years. I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries or some similar type of crime show with my husband. And what story pops up? One about a man on that exact stretch of highway with a red truck that used to use those exact tactics to get a few women to pull over and murdered them. I'm really glad my gut told me something was wrong and to get back in my car and drive. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to like, comment, share this video, and subscribe for further content. Be sure to email me your story ideas to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. My email address is in the description box below. Until we meet again, stay sinful.